You're looking at an island you've probably never heard of. It's 8 kilometers long, and you can walk from end to end in less than 2 hours. The entire population could fit in a medium-sized football stadium, and it funds one of the most dangerous regimes on the planet. Every ballistic missile that Iran has launched in recent weeks. Every Shahed drone. The salaries of the army, the bureaucrats, the judges who execute dissidents. The nuclear program, everything, absolutely everything, goes through this island before it exists. 90% of Iran's oil exports leave from here, from a single point, a single vulnerability. Iran. It spent decades concentrating everything here, thinking it was building strength. But the more power you concentrate in a single place, the bigger the target on that place's back becomes. And now, according to sources inside the White House, the United States is considering sending thousands of troops to take it. Not to bomb, to take. And for a mission like this, you don't send just any soldier. You send the same men who entered Venezuela, crossed Caracas in the dark, and captured Maduro in less than 5 minutes. And today, you will understand how this invasion would work. Who are the chosen men? How do they plan to enter a defended island, step by step, and why? Could this be the riskiest operation the United States has ever put on the table? But before talking about the men, you need to understand why this island exists and why it became the Achilles heel of an entire country. Kharg Island is in the Persian Gulf, about 25 kilometers off the Iranian coast. It's flat, small, and nothing special when you look at it from above, but underwater, around it, there's something that changes everything. Depth. Almost the entire coast of Iran is too shallow to accommodate supertankers. The giant ships transport oil around the world. Kharg is one of the only exceptions. And because of that, Iran built the country's largest oil export terminal there. 10 docks, more than 50 storage tanks, with a capacity for 31 million barrels. Submarine pipelines connecting the island directly to the largest Iranian oil fields just a few kilometers inland. In 2025, this island generated $53 billion in revenue for Iran, almost 11% of the country's entire GDP. It came from here. So when Michael Rubin, former Pentagon advisor, told the National Security Council that capturing Kharg would be the ultimate checkmate against the regime, well, he wasn't exaggerating about Kharg. Iran doesn't pay the army, doesn't pay public servants, doesn't fund the nuclear program. But here's the problem that almost no one is talking about. Even if the United States takes the island, Iran controls what flows through the pipeline from the mainland. Capturing Kharg without controlling the flow of oil is like taking possession of a faucet without the pipe. This contradiction is central to the current debate in the United States. But let's go back to the beginning. Because before any political decision, there's a practical question. Who would do this? The name that appears in all the reports is Delta Force, and that name probably doesn't mean much if you don't know what's behind it. Delta Force was created in 1977 by Colonel Charles Beckwith, an American veteran who had trained with the British SAS. And he came back obsessed with an idea. The United States needed a unit that could do what no conventional army could, able to get into the right place at the right time without being seen and get out before the enemy even knows what happened. Today, Delta is made up of about 1,000 people, but only 250 to 300 of them are combat operators. The others are support, intelligence, logistics, communications, their own aviation unit. To get into that group of 250, candidates go through a process that eliminates more than 90% of those who try. It's not an exaggeration, it's the real number. The process starts with weeks of land navigation, only mountainous terrain in West Virginia, carrying 20-kilogram backpacks without sleeping well, without knowing what the next objective is until they reach the previous one. Each day is harder than the last. The final test has a simple name: the Long Walk. It's 64 kilometers with 20 kilograms on your back, on rough terrain, against the clock, without knowing what the required time to pass is. Whoever completes this enters 6 months of operational training, with shooting techniques that most soldiers have never seen. Demolitions, urban infiltration, target extraction, operations in chemical and nuclear environments. And then, out of every group that starts the selection, less than 5% survive. The men who come out on the other side of this process are not just physically superior, they're able to make the right decisions under a level of pressure that paralyzes most people. But Delta doesn't get anywhere alone. There is a unit that almost no one knows about, and it's just as important as the operators themselves. They're called the Night Stalkers, and their official name is the Special Operations Aviation Regiment. They're the pilots who transport Delta, and they have an operational standard that's unique in the world. They reach the objective with a margin of error of 30 seconds. Not 30 minutes, 30 seconds. Any deviation from that is considered a failure. Their helicopters are radically modified versions of the most well-known models. One of them flies with night navigation radar, infrared sensors, and an in-flight refueling probe. The military calls it the MH-60M Blackhawk in the attack configuration. It's called the Direct Action Penetrator. In this version, it carries rotary machine guns, a 30mm cannon, and up to 16 Hellfire missiles. Another one can carry 33 soldiers, or 11 tons of cargo, and travel more than 600 kilometers without landing. This is the MH-47G Chinook. It was exactly this combination that entered Venezuela in January of 2026. In the operation, called Absolute Resolve, the Night Stalkers flew 30 meters above the water to avoid radars in total darkness. For over an hour, the Delta operators arrived at Maduro's compound in Fort Tiuna, Caracas, and captured the president in less than 5 minutes before he could reach the reinforced bunker. During the extraction, one of the Chinooks was hit by enemy fire. The pilot, Eric Slover, took 4 bullets in his leg and hip. He didn't let go of the stick, kept the aircraft in the air, completed the mission, and brought everyone back. 0 Americans killed, mission accomplished. But Kharg isn't Caracas. And before we get into the plan, let's think for a second. Look, the American government publicly said one thing about sending soldiers to Iran, but what sources inside the White House are revealing is completely different. Have you noticed this contradiction? The government said it won't put soldiers in Iran, and is planning exactly that. This contradiction is no accident. It's the riskiest bet the Trump administration has ever put on the table. And understanding why they're willing to take this risk requires understanding what's at stake. On the other side, in Venezuela, the goal was to extract a person from a building in Kharg. The objective would be to occupy and hold 21 square kilometers of territory, with Iranian artillery 25 kilometers away on the mainland. Rockets, missiles, and drones available to attack at any moment. What would this plan look like in action? The American attacks on March 13th have already destroyed more than 90 military targets on the island. The air defenses were disabled, the airport was destroyed, the naval base was demolished, and the missile bunkers exploded. The oil infrastructure was deliberately preserved. With the island's defenses already eliminated, the capture plan would begin with something that seems straight out of a movie, but it's absolutely real. Hours before the helicopters took off, small teams of operators would jump out of planes. At 9,000 meters, it's what's called a halo jump, meaning high altitude, low opening. They fall at speeds of almost 200 kilometers per hour, in free fall, in the dark, with temperatures of minus 50 degrees Celsius. Up there, they breathe pure oxygen for half an hour before the jump to avoid decompression sickness. They use night vision goggles and GPS on their wrists. And they only open their parachutes at 600 meters above the ground, too late for any radar to detect. The reason is simple. The plane stays out of range of the defense systems. The jumpers are practically invisible. They reach the ground silently with no helicopter yet on the horizon. These operators have one objective above all: to confirm the remaining enemy positions, mark landing zones with infrared flares, and eliminate the last pockets of resistance that could compromise the arrival of the helicopters. Only then do the Night Stalkers take off from Kuwait. It's a 45-minute flight at very low altitude over the Persian Gulf. The MH-60Ms in attack configuration fly ahead, suppressing any enemy position that still responds. Behind them, the Chinooks arrive loaded with Delta operators and Rangers from the 75th Ranger Regiment, the unit that provides the security cordon in every operation of this kind. Delta goes straight to the precision targets, the terminal control room, the communications center, the strategic points that need to be captured. At the same time, the Rangers isolate the perimeter, block access routes, and secure the position. Specialized explosives teams sweep the terminal immediately afterward. The biggest risk at this moment isn't enemy fire, it's encountering demolition charges, which the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the regime's elite military force, may have planted in advance to destroy the infrastructure. If the island were to fall now, suppose all of this works. The island is taken, the terminal is intact, the problem starts now. To understand what happens next, it's worth looking at what happened at the Haditha Dam in Iraq in April 2003. 154 Rangers and Delta operators captured the dam and were ordered to hold it for 25 hours. They ended up staying for 5 days. During that time, they faced the equivalent of an entire division of the Iraqi army. More than 350 heavy artillery shells of 155 millimeters fell around them in 36 hours. 154 men against several thousand. At one point, the Rangers ran out of artillery ammunition and had to call for air support to destroy an enemy position, less than 200 meters from where they themselves were. And they held on. But in Kharg, the problem is even bigger. The Iranian mainland is just 25 kilometers away, well within range of artillery guns and rockets, short-range missiles, and drones. Shahed, the same ones that have already proven to be difficult to intercept in this war. Military analysts estimate that at least 5,000 soldiers would be needed to take and sustainably hold the island. With air defense systems, counter-battery radars, their own artillery, support helicopters, and continuous resupply logistics. And all of this needs to come from somewhere, because the airport runway was destroyed in the bombings. And there's an even bigger problem, and maybe one that few people talk about. Look, most people assume that the goal would be to destroy Kharg, but destroying it would be a serious strategic mistake. American planners know this. Iran has already proven that it knows how to recover from destruction. It did this repeatedly in the 1980s. They fixed what was destroyed, created alternative routes, and continued exporting. The real move is to capture it intact. Yes, it's the difference between cutting off your enemy's arm and holding his wrist. With the island in American hands, Iran loses control of its main source of revenue without being able to simply rebuild. And this scenario, well, American planners have already thought about the next step, even if Iran tries to shut down the mainland pipeline. There is a parallel pressure that the United States could apply to force China to stop buying oil. China buys almost 90% of everything that comes out of Kharg. Without a buyer, shutting off the valve doesn't solve anything. For Iran, the oil remains stuck. Either way, it's pressure from both sides at the same time. Military pressure on the island, diplomatic pressure on the buyers. History has already shown what happens when this pressure works. During the Iran-Iraq War, Iraq bombed Kharg dozens of times between 1984 and 1988. In 1986, the facilities were practically out of operation, but Iran never stopped completely because it still had buyers. This time, the equation is different. In the end, the decision to take Kharg or not will depend on a calculation that goes beyond any military capability. It's answering a difficult question. The strategic value of grabbing the regime by the throat. Does it justify the risk of a conflict because this conflict may be easier to start than to finish? Every American administration since Carter has looked at this island and backed off, and Trump, well, he might be the first not to back off. And what do you think? Should the United States try to capture the island, or is the risk too high? Comment down below. If this content helped you better understand what's happening in the world, share it with someone who also wants to know, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. See you next time.